Are the daily experiences of my life one that is filled with pain and trials and helplessness? Do I manage well my challenges in my relationships with my family, relatives, and friends? Living a more meaningful, happy, and fulfilling life. To allow God to embrace you, to enlighten you, to find God in all things, living a more discerning life. Dear brothers and sisters in Christ, we began this series of how to live a more discerning life with the essential questions of life that every person needs to reflect on. Like, for example, am I a happy person? Do I live a meaningful and fulfilling life? Do I manage well my challenges and my relationships with my family, relatives, and friends? What about the goodness and values that I have and see in myself that long to grow and bear fruit, and the like? We pointed out that these questions are fundamental to our daily living, and to be able to answer them, we need to know and affirm our true identity of who we are. We pointed out that the question, who am I, is more important than what I have and possess in our lives. This is because our material wealth and power and prestige in the secular world does not assure us in any way that we will live a truly happy and meaningful life. In developing this theme further, we reflected on how we need to live a more authentic life. We reflected on the different aspects of God. We reflected on what kind of God do we believe in, and also pondered on how God will never fail us and is full of mercy and love for every person. As we have reflected on the key aspects of the self and on God, today we would reflect on the third inseparable aspect of the living of a more discerning life, and this aspect is the secular world within which we live and are very much part of. As the secular values that are promoted are the air we breathe in, especially through the internet and the social media which daily bombard us and compete for our attention, and also influence us into thinking and imbibing secular values which are essentially a distortion of the reality of who we are, and a promotion of the values that will make us self-centered instead of being other-centered and Christ-centered. If I were to ask ourselves, how many of us watching this video presentation does not wish to own a huge bungalow house, drive a Ferrari, and have some $30 million in the bank? I believe a large majority of us, if not all, would immediately jump to the conclusion and respond, yes, I would want all of these riches and material wealth. But, my brothers and sisters in Christ, if we were to reflect on the deeper level of truth and ask ourselves another question, do you think by having all these material wealth would necessarily guarantee that we would be living a happy and fulfilling life? And so if we reflect on this question more deeply, we will realize that no material wealth in itself can guarantee that we will live a happy and fulfilling life. Otherwise, the happiest people and families in the world would be the richest people, while the poorest people are the least happy and the least fulfilled in their lives in this world. And we know that this is furthest from the truth. I would like us then to reflect on this true story of Matthew, whom I baptized 7 years ago in the parish of the Church of St. Ignatius. His conversion story is very revealing of what we have been emphasizing on regarding material possession and prestige and wealth of the secular world. Matthew shares, he says, "For 40 years I had been an atheist. I was not only a non-believer, I used to mock Christians and other religious people for not having the strength to help themselves and having to turn to a make-believe divine power for help in all their needs. I had believed that we are responsible for our future, and it is a sign of weakness to ask for help. I was self-centered, arrogant, and chased after materialism. I was a top banker and thought I didn't need anybody's help. My self-worth and esteem was measured by the possessions and titles I had. My respect and social standing depended on how much money I made for myself. But no matter how much I made, there was always seemed to be a sense of discontentment within me, which I mistook for ambition. That ambition consumed me. I was unfaithful to my wife and justified my indiscretions by finding 100 reasons why she and I were incompatible. I had everything I wanted materially, yet I felt empty. I thought that I felt empty because my marriage was dead. Seeing 3 marriage counselors did not help. So last year, I asked for a divorce. I had justified to myself why a divorce was good. I had separated from my wife and moved out twice before. This was despite my children crying and needing me. Seeing them unhappy broke my heart, and I was always torn. Yet, I felt what I wanted was right. Why should I deny myself happiness, I asked. Father Heng had come to my house and prayed the prayer of reconciliation. He had even enthroned the Sacred Heart of Jesus in my home, where Jesus is the center and head of the family. Last December, my wife told Father Heng that his prayer did not work. But 5 days before I was to move out of my house, I lost my job. I had no marriage, no wife, no children, no mother, and no job. I had a panic attack. I couldn't breathe and thought I was having a heart attack. It was the worst feeling in the world. My world had crumbled, and for the first time, I had nothing. After hospital checks, I prayed to God in desperation. I didn't even know how to pray, but I said something like this: should I call you God, Lord, Father, or Jesus? I never believed in you, but I really need your help now. I have made many mistakes in my life, and I want to change. I need a job. I need my family back. Please help me, God. I then apologized to my wife, and she forgave me with one condition: that the only way back to the family and marriage was that I have to love God. My sisters and brothers in Christ, the empty promises of what the secular world offers, of living a happy and fulfilling life through the possessions of riches, prestigious positions, glamour of driving a posh car, and condoning a lifestyle of infidelity to one's spouse, are all clearly articulated very clearly by Matthew's testimony. Matthew has very sincerely shared that in fact of being consumed by the secular values have led him to the brink of the disaster, of the destruction of all that he can truly give him happiness and fulfillment in life. He said, I lost my job. I had no marriage, no wife, no children, no mother, and no job. Being totally down and out, Matthew in his crisis turned to God and prayed to Him in desperation and with humility and prayed. I have made many mistakes, he says, in my life, and I want to change. He says and prayed, I need a job. I need my family back. Please help me, God. My brothers and sisters in Christ, there is much we can reflect on in this very moving testimony of Matthew. But let us not overlook the point that first, the pain and the crisis in Matthew's career and life was a positive pain and trauma that shocked him back into the reality of once again acknowledging that he needs God in his life. That his wife and family and career and living a life of fidelity to his wife are what gives happiness and fulfillment in his life, and not his self-centered arrogance and what he chased for after materialism. Second, let us not forget that it was when Matthew was stripped of his pride, of all his material possession, secular career success, and his bond of relationship with his wife and family, that at rock bottom, his conversion came about when he, through God's graces, was able to humble himself, to turn to God and beg for help. And very importantly too, asked his wife for forgiveness. My sisters and brothers in Christ, most hurting person's condition for forgiving an unfaithful spouse would be that they promised that they would give up living the life of infidelity and break with all the ties they have with their mistresses and the like. However, Matthew's wife, being a good and faithful Catholic, asked with great wisdom that Matthew, her husband, must promise to love God. Matthew shared, she forgave me on one condition, that the only way back to the family and marriage was that I have to love God. My brothers and sisters in Christ, Matthew's wife had such great wisdom because she knew that the only way her husband can really change a new way of life of fidelity to her and his family is not what he's going to promise, because they can be changeable, but more importantly, how much he's able to love God. And if he is able to love God, God will surely bless him and bless his family and their future. Thank you for your attention, and I look forward to having you in our next session as we will continue to reflect on who God is for us more clearly, so that you and I can have a more and live a more discerning life. God bless you.